everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So how much do you know about the Algerian Civil War and the liberation from France? Not that much, I guess. You probably know that Algeria at one point was a colony of the French and then it wasn't anymore. And a piece of the puzzle of how that happened is displayed in this movie that came out just a few years after the events that took place, which actually is right behind me. What a coincidence. So the movie of today is a complete cult classic, but the question is it any good? That's what we're gonna find out. This is the Battle for Algeria. So Ali begins as a petty theft and pickpocket, but he soon gets sort of drafted into FLN, who is a group that is fighting against the French occupation force and demands to have a free Algeria. And he rises throughout their ranks and becomes a more and more iconic figure. And with him on their side, they start to crank up the violence against the French, killing police officers, staging bombs and protests and stuff like that, and really testing the limits of what the French authorities can muster. There is fighting in the mountains, but it is mostly also fighting down in Algiers, especially, because he comes from the Kasbah, which is the Muslim part of Algiers, not the European part where they have discos and dancing and alcohol and stuff like that. It's basically like two different nations occupying one area. And the French response with putting up roadblocks and imprisoning the people of FLN and stuff like that. When that does not help, Colonel Matthew steps in, who is the head of the French paratroopers, and he doesn't see this as a police matter. He sees this as a stage of war. This can only be resolved, in his opinion, by using military tactics in order to bring these people down. That's exactly what this movie is about. So the Battle for Algiers is basically a sort of pseudo-documentary where they, in very stark, grimy, black and white, reenacts the events that happened and led up to what essentially is the end of the movie, which is also the beginning of the movie. Because we see basically how Ali's journey ends, but we don't know exactly how we got to that point. This movie is fantastic in a sense, because with very small measures, with very little budget, they're able to craft a movie that just brims with authenticity and atmosphere. Because most people starring in this movie aren't actors, they're actually locals who are just, reenact what they remember. It's because this happens very shortly after what happened in Algeria. So, should you see this movie? Yes, most definitely, because it has so much tension to itself, it has so much heart to itself. It is, by and large, a very, pro-Algerian and anti-colonialism movie, but it doesn't shy away from sequences where, FLN takes revenge after, stuff has gone wrong by mowing down innocent women, children, civilians, and stuff like that. But it also doesn't shy away from the torturing and the French blowing up buildings which belong to suspected terrorists and stuff like that. So the movie has a bunch of different phases. Now there were things I didn't enjoy as much as other people would probably do, because I didn't really like the black and white documentary style that this movie had. Maybe that made this movie actually more timeless than it would have been if this would have been a movie that was just made in Technicolor, with the techniques of the time. Maybe it would have looked more dated, I don't know. And I also think it was a miss for them to actually have the last, 10, 12 minutes of the movie basically taking up 35 minutes of plot, where it's actually, when they talk about what happens later, because it is a little bit too rushed in my opinion. But you really feel like you're there. You feel like you're there when, they have the FLN meetings. You really feel like you're there when Colonel Matthew is, talking to his paratroopers of why they're doing this, how they're going to do this, and why the people at home are counting on that they will not fail and been able to keep Algeria as a part of the French nation. I would have liked to see more, what was happening, in the United Nations with the debates there and, the fighting in the mountains and the discussions back in France, what they said about things and stuff like that. But this is a powerful movie that will stay with you for a long time, because it has sequences that makes you really feel that oh my god, this movie is just so amazingly powerful, and you can feel like you're there. The sequences when they're talking about, you know, what they're going to do later. We have sequences when they have this wedding that is actually made not as a Muslim wedding, but as an FLN wedding, you know, to prove how dedicated they are to the cause and all that stuff. But most importantly, the absolutely amazing sequence when the three women are, you know, putting on Western clothes and, you know, making these primitive bombs and, you know, going out. You don't know when the bomb is going to go off, but you know that they are going to, you know, kill a bunch of people in a while. You don't know when it's going to happen. The editing, the music by Ennio Morricone, it's just amazing. The Battle for Algiers remains a very controversial movie to this day, and, you know, just had a very, very limited theatrical run in France and was pulled from cinemas just a few, you know, weeks after it had been released. So this movie remains a very controversial movie, but I really like it. I just wish that they could have structured it a little bit different, not doing it as this pseudo-documentary, but maybe it doesn't matter that much because this movie feels so authentic and it feels so real. And do I think this movie could work as a remake? Yes, I do think it could work as a remake. You could basically make the same movie. You could make it in the same place with the same authenticity, I think, with the same amount of tension, attention to details and feel to it, but also with, you know, historical hindsight to the whole thing, with a budget and things like that, incorporating the things I kind of missed. Do I think it can work? Yes. Do I think it should be made? Yes. Do I think it will happen? No, probably not. But this is still a movie that is very powerful and is sort of this classic that actually holds up because of how simple it was made, and that they, you know, just didn't take any shortcut, and because they were so dedicated to make a movie that really sweeps you in and make you realize what happens and, you know, teach you a little bit about Algerian history. It's not unbiased or anything like that, but that is not what this movie is supposed to be. It is supposed to show what happens from the Algerian perspective. They do throw in things about, you know, the French, what they think about the whole thing and stuff like that, and I thought that was important to make you understand why, you know, the paratroopers did what they did and things like that. This is a very, very good movie, and I just wish that it could have been a little bit better with how it was structured, and maybe that we could have seen more of the political process, but what do I know? Well, The Battle for Algiers is a movie that is all in the atmosphere, and it is a movie that has so much attention to detail, and it has so many powerful sequences that I can live with some of the things I thought wasn't handled as great as the other things. I give this movie 78 points. It is a movie that you will never forget. It's very, very unique and has sequences that you will never ever forget. So I'll see you next time for, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.